Welcome back to the Perfectly Homeless podcast. We're continuing with the State Homeless Score Project. This never gets old. Let's start. So, for you listening right now, the mission for today is that we are filling out a dynamic, evolving scorecard for the state of North Dakota.
Right, and we're looking at how state systems and local realities actually collide.
Exactly. We're grading the machinery of the state in real time. But we need to be clear about how this works.
Yeah, I need to remind you, the listener, to be patient with us today. This score is going to evolve dynamically as we analyze all these different facets of the state's systems.
It's a process.
It really is. We won't reveal the final grade until the very end, and trust me, it's going to shift a lot from where we start.
For sure. So let's jump into the state overview. If you just glance at the official point-in-time count from 2024, North Dakota recorded just 865 people experiencing homelessness on a given night.
Which, sounds incredibly low.
Right. In a state of roughly 780,000 people, 865 is almost like a rounding error. It paints this picture that, well, it's a completely solved problem.
It does look that way on paper. But we know the point-in-time count is just a single light snapshot, right? It heavily undercounts rural populations and people who are, actively avoiding detection.
Yeah, a hidden crisis.
Exactly. Because to understand the actual scale, we have to look at the data from the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services. Over the last 3 years, nearly 21,000 residents applied for emergency rental assistance or eviction prevention.
Wait, 21,000?
Yeah, 21,000. And those applications didn't just come from Fargo or Bismarck. They came from all 100% of North Dakota's counties.
So that official 865 count is really just the tip of the iceberg, the people actually standing in line at a shelter on one specific night.
Exactly.
While that 21,000 number, that's the massive invisible ice beneath the surface, people living doubled up on couches or just right on the brink.
And that hidden population reveals some massive systemic patterns, too. Like, Native Americans make up only about 5% of the state's total population.
Okay.
But they account for a staggering 32% of shelter users.
Wow. That's a huge disparity.
It is. It really points to this legacy of geographic isolation colliding with a lack of local economic infrastructure.
So, keeping that reality in mind, let's pivot to the scorecard itself. We need to look at why people are losing their housing in the first place.
Right.
Which brings us to Category 1, housing affordability.
So breaking down the income-to-rent gap, nearly 39% of renters in North Dakota are cost-burdened, meaning they're spending over 30% of their income just on housing.
Which is wild because there's this big narrative of North Dakota having this thriving, booming economy, right?
Oh, absolutely. The oil boom narrative.
Yeah, but when you look at the labor market, 39% of North Dakota job openings pay an average of less than $20 an hour. But you need a much higher hourly wage to afford these rising rents. So is this booming economy actually masking a crisis?
Yes. Essential workers simply cannot afford to exist there anymore. The energy boom brought high wages for some, and developers built housing scaled to those inflated wages.
Leaving the regular working class behind.
Precisely. And you see the stark reality of this in the eviction courts. Between January 2023 and December 2024, there were 5,026 eviction judgments.
Over 5,000.
Yeah. That means 4.3% of all occupied rental units were affected in just 2 years.
That is brutal.
It is. And because working full-time is no longer a buffer against losing a home, this lowers the overall picture.
Okay, so that brings us to Category 2, shelter access. Because when that rent check bounces and the eviction happens, where do people go?
Well, they try to go to the emergency shelters, but North Dakota shelters are totally overwhelmed.
Like out of beds completely.
Yeah, pretty much. Take the Missouri Slope Area-Wide United Way in Bismarck. They have a 42-bed capacity. But since 2020, they've seen a 78% increase in people served. They are often housing more than double their actual capacity.
That sounds dangerous.
It is. And shelters in Fargo-Moorhead are seeing the exact same strain. They just can't handle the intake of the working poor.
It's like this brutal game of musical chairs. Except the state hasn't just added more players to the game, they've actually removed half the chairs.
That is a very accurate way to put it. The bottleneck at the emergency shelter level is extreme. So, based on this, the current draft score is
All right, hold on. Let me jump in. For you listening, we are presenting the preliminary score overlay right now. You can see it clearly labeled as the draft score.
Yes, and I really need to emphasize heavily here, this is not the final score.
Right, we're only at the midpoint.
Exactly. I want to warn the listener that these upcoming categories concerning law enforcement and social services, they're going to significantly shift this final result.
Okay, so let's continue the analysis with Category 3, criminalization and enforcement, because
Right.
it's a logical question, right?
Right.
If the shelters are at double capacity and they have to turn people away, folks have to sleep outside. So how does the law actually treat them when they do?
Well, this is where we look at recent punitive measures. And just to be clear to the listener, we are analyzing the systemic impact here impartially. We're not taking political sides, just looking at the legal framework.
Right, just the facts on the ground.
Exactly. So, in October 2024, Bismarck passed Ordinance 6587. It's explicitly a homeless encampment ban.
Right before winter.
Yes. In fact, the Missouri Valley Coalition for Homeless People pleaded for a delay. They wanted to create a public health plan before the winter freeze hit. They noted that 63 people were unsheltered on a single night.
Did the city delay it?
No. The ordinance passed 4-0,
Wow.
and then you have West Fargo. In June 2025, they passed Ordinance 1256. This one makes it a Class B misdemeanor to reside or sleep in buildings, vehicles, or temporary structures that aren't designed for residential occupancy.
A Class B misdemeanor. Just for sleeping outside in freezing weather.
Yes.
That is, I mean, getting a criminal record just for surviving that completely ruins your chances of ever passing an apartment background check later.
It does. It traps people. And because of this heavy reliance on law enforcement over public health, this shifts the score downwards.
Okay, so if tents and sleeping bags are outlawed, what about retreating to a car or an RV? That brings us to Category 4, vehicle dwelling friendliness.
Which is a very common survival tactic.
Yeah.
19% of those who sought housing help, which is about 2,500 households, were living in vehicles or unsheltered.
So how friendly is the state to them?
Not very. There's a patchwork of hostility toward vehicle dwellers. For example, state rest areas allow resting, but they explicitly ban overnight camping.
Okay, what about in the cities?
Fargo restricts downtown street parking between 2 a.m. and 7 a.m., specifically to stop overnight parking. But Bismarck goes even further.
How so?
They outright ban parking campers, RVs, and trailers on residential streets from December 1st to March 31st. They cite snow removal as the reason.
During the absolute coldest months of the year.
Yeah. And violators get hit with a $150 daily fine. If the vehicle's there for 48 hours, it gets towed.
So they're literally taking away people's only shelter in the dead of winter and handing them a massive fine they obviously can't pay.
Exactly. And because the state practically outlaws winter vehicle survival, this lowers the overall picture.
Man, that is bleak. Let's move to Category 5, outreach and social services. Please tell me there is a silver lining here. Is there any helping hand amidst all these citations and fines?
There actually are some bright spots here. North Dakota Health and Human Services, HHS, they have a surprisingly robust web of preventative and crisis stabilization programs.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, they utilize SNP, WIC, CCF for childcare, LIEP for energy assistance, and they have targeted programs like PATH, which is Projects for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness, and the ND Homeless Grant.
Okay, that's an impressive list of acronyms, I'll admit. But I've got to push back a little here.
Sure.
Are these entry points actually reaching the people who are actively getting towed or cited on the streets? It feels like the state is trying to help, but the local police are just arresting them anyway.
You're right to point that out. I can see there is a major implementation gap there. The friction between state outreach and local enforcement is real, but we do have to credit the robust infrastructure they've built at the state level. So this raises the overall picture.
Fair enough. But that leads us straight into Category 6, pathways to permanent housing. Because all the outreach in the world doesn't really matter if there's no permanent home at the end of the line, right?
Exactly. And this is the ultimate bottleneck. While HHS has those great intervention programs, the outflow is severely clogged.
What do the numbers look like?
Last year, 1,962 North Dakotans entered homelessness, but only 541 were permanently housed.
Wait, really?
Just a fraction of them.
Yeah, and part of the problem is that with 106,000 households falling into very low or extremely low income categories, the lack of affordable housing supply is just trapping people.
They're stuck.
Stuck in episodic or chronic homelessness. A system with no back door inevitably bursts at the seams. And so, this finalizes our draft adjustments.
All right, let's synthesize this journey for you, the listener, as we head into our final summary. We've seen some major strengths today, right? mainly a genuine multi-agency HHS effort to provide safety nets and track the data.
Right, the state level is trying.
But the major weaknesses are just staggering. You've got a massive gap between wages and rent, completely overwhelmed shelters, and municipalities resorting to incredibly harsh criminalization right before winter hits.
It's a tough reality.
Yeah.
So let's officially assign the specific letter grades for each category.
Let's hear them.
For housing affordability, the grade is a D.
Makes sense.
For shelter access, the grade is an F. For criminalization and enforcement, the grade is an F.
Ouch.
For vehicle dwelling friendliness, also an F. But for outreach and social services, the grade is a B+.
There's the bright spot.
Right. And finally, for pathways to permanent housing, the grade is a D-.
Okay, so it's time for the drum roll moment. Let's reveal the final perfectly homeless state score for North Dakota.
The final state score is a D-.
A D-.
Yes. North Dakota earned this exact score because of this brutal collision. You have freezing, life-threatening weather colliding with artificially high rents. And on top of that, you have punitive local laws that punish people for just trying to survive the cold.
It's a system at war with itself. It leaves you with this final, provocative thought to really mull over. When a state's economic boom leaves its most vulnerable citizens completely out in the cold, and local cities literally make it illegal to pitch a tent or sleep in a car to survive that cold, who is ultimately responsible for the human cost?
That's the real question.
That's the perfectly homeless state score for North Dakota. Thank you for tuning in, Felicia. If you find this series interesting, please tap the like and subscribe buttons, and we will see you in the next state.
If you'd like to support the project, click on over to the Perfectly Homeless Etsy store and get yourself a warm hoodie with our logo, or you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/perfectlyhomeless. Every purchase and donation helps fund future episodes in this 50-state journey through homelessness in America. Wear the logo. Start a conversation. Because homelessness isn't someone else's problem anymore. It's happening in every state, every city, and more neighborhoods than most people realize. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I'll see you in the next episode.